Welcome, everyone, to our March 10th, 2026 webinar, Powerful Personal Protectors. No, this webinar isn't about our guardian angels, though they are indeed powerful personal protectors. Um, and I thought I'd just introduce that idea with a story, but we're not actually going to talk about guardian angels tonight. But I must have been protected, and I think on many occasions I have been. So when I was in college, I went down to New York City from Boston to to just have a weekend. I think it was Thanksgiving weekend actually, and I decided one evening I'd go out and see a movie that I'd wanted to see. And when I was studying at school, there really wasn't much opportunity for that sort of thing. So I checked the subway routings and realized I had to take a subway to go from Manhattan out to Brooklyn, which is easy to do. So I went over to the subway station and got myself on the train and headed out to Brooklyn. And I think it was after we had crossed into Brooklyn, crossed under the river. I think it's under the river. It might have been over the river. I don't remember. Um, and we were out in Brooklyn, and I'm looking at the subway map, and I realize I'm on the wrong train, and I'm parallel to the track that I wanted to be on, but maybe as much as a mile north. So I get to the stop where I should get off, that is the street I should get off at, but I'm about a mile away from my destination. And I'm a young college kid, kind of naive. No, I was really naive. And I get off in Brooklyn. And the place I get off at is strangely quiet. There's like nobody there. Um, and it's dark, it's nighttime. And so I head south. I have a good sense of direction. I knew where I was going. And I head south and I'm walking along. And after a few blocks, not seeing anybody, it gets dark. There's no street lights. And I enter an area that's completely dark. And I'm walking along, and there's some railroad tracks to cross. And I'm walking along, and I begin to get this feeling that, I'm a small person. I'm out there in the middle of nowhere. There's no light. I'm kind of vulnerable out here, and there's nothing I can do now. I'm out in this bleak area. So I just keep walking, and eventually I see some lights in the distance, and I get there, and I walk into this neighborhood, and there's like nobody there. There's no cars, there's nobody on the street, which is probably just as well. And I keep walking, and I eventually get to the intersection where I was supposed to get off if I'd been on the right train. And there's the movie theater, and I go in and enjoy the movie. But as I reflected on that over the many decades since then, I've really believed, I just couldn't not believe that I was protected that night and that no harm came to me, uh, in what was potentially a very dangerous situation. So, yes, there are guardian angels. I'm sure there are because I made it through that night and I'm here to tell about it. Um, but there's also that part that it connects to this story, which is what powerful personal protectors are in that internal protective sense. For the purpose of this webinar, powerful personal protectors. I like the alliteration. I actually made up the phrase. I get to take credit for that. Powerful personal protectors are parts of our personalities that operate often in the background, meaning we don't really see them, to keep us safe from psychological pain, uh, which these, I'm going to call them PPPs for short, which they believe um, will be inflicted on them by others, by other people. Our PPPs see the world as dangerous and themselves as vulnerable. How do you know? Well, what are the signs that your PPPs are guarding you? I put it in the form of questions in the email I sent out to you folks and put on Facebook. So I'll just say what the questions were because it kind of introduces the topic. Do you find, at least sometimes, that you play it safe and act risk aversive. You stay away from risk. You avoid risk. Do you often avoid social situations, decline invitations, stay at home when you could go out, pass up opportunities because engaging with others would reveal to others aspects of yourself that, well, either you dislike or you feel ashamed of, um, or that they would tell you you should be ashamed of, or perhaps the opposite, that you just don't want to show your strengths, your interests, your talents, your abilities, your creativity, that others might reject, criticize, ridicule, make fun of you. Do you avoid intimacy and deep personal relationships because you fear rejection and perhaps abandonment? In other words, you stay away from relationships because you expect the worst, and that's going to hurt, and you don't want to go through that. Perhaps you find that you engage in hours of self stimulating behaviors, such as video games, scrolling on social media, and things like endless organizing and reorganizing, and just using up time. Or perhaps you engage in repetitive movements such as rocking, flapping, maybe, some of you maybe, or pacing back and forth, or in walking around in circles. All of these are called stimming, self-stimulatory behaviors. The, the vernacular now is stimming. So what are PPPs trying to protect us from? They fear abuse, ridicule, teasing, which is minor, bullying, assault, baiting, being led on, manipulation, such as gaslighting, kind of the same thing, being told something when it really isn't true, particularly being told something will be good for you when it, you know, isn't in your best interest. They fear deception, loss of acceptance, loss of connection with others, loss of love is a big one. And they fear physical trauma, beatings, accidents, natural disasters. I had to mention that because we had tornado sirens tonight. And my PPPs, I have to say, were remarkably calm. Didn't I didn't even go to seek shelter. I live in a place with a lot of windows. I can watch out and listen for evidence of a tornado in the vicinity. I had plenty of time to hide if I needed to, but I didn't. Um, our PPPs may also fear chaos, fear change. It can be very hard for people who have strong personal protectors, powerful personal protectors, to um, to move from one place to another, even to visit, and sometimes even to go out. I just rather not go out, and maybe not even know why. It's just there's change involved. They may fear loud noise, animals, things that move quickly, particularly. Um, they may fear human touch. Um, in extreme cases, such as people who might be diagnosed with autism or schizophrenia, um, PPPs find life in the world to be overwhelming. Their sensory experience of sights, sounds, touch, tactile sensations, things they feel, things on their skin, clothing, fabrics, so on. Tastes and smells can be utterly intolerable in extreme cases. Environmental factors for them must be either controlled or avoided. And oftentimes it's avoidance. Indeed, a lot of energy can go into avoidance of unpleasant sensory experiences. Contact with other people may also be avoided. A typical thing would be eye contact. People, when you meet them and they look at you for a second and then they look down or look away, is a typical thing. Speech, talking, and physical contact may be very limited. Uh, some people with autism, for instance, don't speak until they're 3, 4, 5, even 6 years of age. And it can be one of the things that leads to a diagnosis of autism, for instance, because they just don't speak, um, and they seem to understand things and may respond particularly to parental guidance, but they don't speak back. And many of them avoid physical contact with other people. Hugs may be off limits. They just don't like to hug. If you've seen the Big Bang Theory, or Young Sheldon, the junior version of that when Sheldon was young. Um, he if somebody hugs him, he's standing there. I don't know if you can see with the hands out, around them, but not holding on to them. It's like just barely tolerating being touched like that. Interestingly, people like that sometimes respond well to being wrapped up by other people, particularly parents, when they're little. So little kids can be calmed, for instance, um, by being wrapped up. And that means arms and legs are just completely held like they were in the womb, as they say, being just like cradled in that way. Um, uh, People with autism often get into trouble with authorities, police typically, or other people in authority when out in public. Arrests, beatings, even the use of deadly force for disorderly contact and resisting arrest happen all too often. Police generally don't receive, I'm just commenting, police generally don't receive adequate training in handling autistic and mentally ill persons who are having a meltdown, who are having an episode, who are having, a breakdown. Um, and so the police are often very authoritarian in their approach. They really, tell people what they should do. I need you to, or you need to, and they can't conform. They can't do it. They can't respond submissively and compliantly when they're confronted like that. They just freak out. And the more authoritarian a police officer or other authority acts, the worse it is, and the worse the response is from such people. I've had a fair amount of contact with people with autism and schizophrenia, and it's very clear that they have powerful personal protectors that are trying to keep them safe by having them contract, pull in, hold back, not engage, not make eye contact, not make physical contact, stay away from particularly crowds, noisy situations, that kind of thing. But all of us have these powerful personal protectors. They may not affect us as much as somebody who qualifies, if you will, for a diagnosis of autism or some such thing. But but we have them, and they try to keep us safe. Um, and when we get to the group clearing session tonight, we'll look in on at least one of our powerful personal protectors and see if we can give them a little support. Now, um, because PPPs keep human potential hidden, keep us unexpressed, keep us contained, keep us withdrawn um, to some degree or other, our interests and abilities um, are often not expressed very well, but sometimes they're expressed with great intensity and very narrow focus. There's a few examples that I love on the internet of people who admittedly have autism. They say they do. One is a gal that loves to paint images of bugs and knows all about bugs. I think she even collects dead bugs, keeps them in boxes. But she'll do paintings and um, models of bugs, moths, butterflies, that sort of thing. And she really knows a lot, but it's like her whole focus is bugs, and she really doesn't care about anything else. And she's really incapable, it looks like, of intimate social relationships. She's just fine as long as she's dealing with dead bugs, or at least bugs that aren't bothering anybody. Um, so anyway, she's an interesting character. Um, there's also a gal who does very insightful political commentary, and when you see her do it, you can, if you close your eyes, you just appreciate the insight that she has, the clarity with which she speaks, and to some degree the speed. She talks pretty fast. But if you see her, if you open your eyes and watch her in these videos, you get the sense she's kind of strange, and that's kind of one of the things that distinguishes everybody is our the way our powerful personal protectors make us kind of weird in one way or another. So it's something that we see in people, what we call neurotypical people. That is us ordinary folks, myself not included. Um, I'm not ordinary. Um, see these folks with PPPs as strange, as weird, as awkward, as cold, distant, peculiar. These powerful personal protectors keep us socially isolated, and they keep us out of seemingly risky situations by putting limits on our relationships. They block our attempts to further ourselves socially and professionally. Um, they keep us from advancing. They crush our creativity. They keep us looking at least to other people as uninteresting, distant, just somebody who could be forgotten very easily. And that's safe. It's all about safety. It's all about perceived lack of safety, a lot of fear involved. But that doesn't mean we have to be limited by them. That doesn't mean we can't deal with them or learn to deal with them over time. Um, as a kid, and I get to say this because here I am up here doing a webinar. I've done a lot of public speaking. I've taught classes. Um, I've been in public a lot. As a kid, I was very, very shy. And I remember one experience that it was a group of people, one class. We were doing a presentation and we were supposed to take turns and we had a script that we were supposed to say. And it was very short. Each of us had basically a paragraph that we were supposed to say in turn. And when my turn came, I couldn't speak. My mind just went blank. I was aware that I was supposed to be speaking. I was aware that people were looking at me, which made it really bad. And I couldn't do anything but stand there. Fortunately, that's all I did was stand there. Could have been worse. Something could have happened, but it didn't. I just stood there. Um, but that's the degree. That's how shy I was, how insecure I felt, how strong a powerful personal protector I had that kept me, so to speak, from making a fool of myself by making me make a fool of myself. Obviously, it wasn't a very satisfactory solution to the situation, but I was stuck with it. And I'm saying I relate this story because I'm hoping that at least some of you can relate to what I'm saying and go like, "Oh yeah, I see that in me. It's happened." And probably, as most of you are, a little older now, you've probably outgrown those things to a considerable degree, but maybe you've noticed that it creeps in every once in a while. Maybe you get writer's block. You just can't find your creativity. Where did it go? Don't know. If you know you have a powerful personal protector, if you recognize the signs, then it gives you a chance to go inside and say hello to that powerful personal protector. And it may turn its back on you. You may get an image of that even. A lot of people that I know which do what I call symbolic processing, where they can see pictures and hear sounds, and sometimes have other sensory experiences in their head. They get that sense of, oh, I got a powerful personal protector and it really doesn't want to meet me today. It's got its back turned to me. It's kind of hiding back there. And you just kind of go like, okay, I'm going to just be here with you. You don't have to talk to me. I'm not going to look at you. I'll sit here and I'll just look out at the scenery, and you can sit there and look out at the scenery, and we'll just be quiet together. And being quietly together is a really important thing. We sit there with awareness, but without trying to have anything accomplished. We accept the reality of our powerful personal protectors. Just the way we, I'm going to say should here, it's a dangerous word, but I'm going to say just the way we really ought to relate to people with autism or schizophrenia or other mental illness, who just, and you see the signs. They can't make eye contact, they don't talk, they're withdrawn, they turn away, they even walk away maybe or run away. Not, they don't usually run, they walk. Um, they avoid, uh, you know, but if we're gentle with them and just say, hey, I'm here. I can be here with you if you have anything you want to say. But if you don't, that's okay too. And you got to mean it, and no judgment. You don't have to say no judgment, but you have to have the attitude of no judgment. The problem we often run into is that, or they run into, people with particularly a very strong uh, influence of powerful personal protectors. Um, they just don't believe. They don't believe. And so to help them overcome that, to help our own powerful personal protectors overcome that, we have to just accept them as they are without trying to change them. We don't need to try to change them, because when they're accepted and when they feel accepted, when they feel they're okay, the fear dissipates. The energy that's bound up in all of that worry about who they are and how people see them and how people are going to judge them and criticize them and maybe abandon them, that fades away. So that brings me to a point, somewhat unrelated and yet very much related. And you may have heard me talk about this before, but it's a word about resilience and courage. Um, and I heard another teacher talking about this just recently. Resilience and courage are what we have when our powerful personal protectors aren't blocking our success. In my view, not everybody agrees with me. I've had discussions with professionals. In my view, resilience and courage aren't things we learn or develop. Again, in my view, rather, they come from not having doubts or fears about possible harm such as humiliation. Um, had a little discussion by text with my sister the other day, and she added to that, from her perspective, that luck, she didn't actually say this, I just took this, luck, fate, and karma play a role in how we deal with our powerful personal protectors. We can make choices. We can choose to accept support. We can choose to make connection. We can choose, and this is what my sister added particularly, she said support and connection. And we can choose to give back. That's a big one. And I really appreciate her adding that. We can choose to give back, because when we do that, our powerful personal protectors relax and we just give. And we learn that we can give without expecting anything in return. And that's a big step for growth for a lot of powerful personal protectors, those parts of us that keep us from reaching out. We walk by instead of addressing that person who's sitting there, perhaps homeless, maybe confused. You know, we help them out. So, support, connection, and giving back can help us overcome our powerful personal protectors. as well as our giving them unconditional acceptance and love. They are ours. And that's what I want to say about powerful personal protectors. Any comments or um, experience you can put in the chat? See, there's a couple of things here. Let me just check. Give me a second. Um, Somebody saying your friend had some great Bronx stories, like Brooklyn. Depends on where you are. Yes, it depends on where you are. I have a daughter that lives in Brooklyn, Greenpoint, I think it is, and it's a lovely little community. There are trees there. People are very nice and friendly, um, and it's a busy New York neighborhood. Um, and it's relatively safe. It's not absolutely safe because nothing is absolutely safe in New York, but it's pretty safe. But there are other neighborhoods in Brooklyn that are not so safe, particularly for little boys, young men like me. I would have been quite the victim. So any comments or questions? If not, um, I'll end the recording here, but just making a note for those who may hear this online that the next webinar is going to be April 7th. April 7th is not the second Tuesday, it's the first Tuesday of April. But the 7th is a convenient time for me to do the webinar. And it's 4 weeks from now, so I'm opening it or I'm moving it up. We'll do the webinar April 7th. And I believe my webinar is going to be When Inhumanity and Unrighteousness Prevail. Um, it had struck me that I probably should have done that this month instead of doing the one I just did on powerful personal protectors. But I had scheduled it for next month because this is a time when we may lose hope um, and lose our optimism and lose our um, way forward and just be overwhelmed with pessimism and despair. Uh, it is not necessary that we do that. We can have hope. So that will be the basic idea of my webinar on April 7th. So please make a note and we look forward to seeing you there. And I'll end the webinar here and we will continue then in a minute or two with our group clearing session.